I was resting.
Welcome to another episode of While I Was Resting, the podcast in which we chat to actors, performers, comedians, musicians, whatever, people in the kind of creative industries about the jobs they do in between jobs, the stuff that they do to kind of keep the ball rolling, to make ends meet, whatever they need to do. And often there's a fascinating world of strange and unusual jobs. And today we've got the lovely Mr. Tom Walker here, and I always like to go over to the guest and just say, Tom, tell us about yourself and what you do and how we might sort of better know you.
Hello, my name is Tom Walker and I'm an ex-out-of-work actor, but I'm probably better known as, actually, not even better known as, I'm just known as Jonathan Pye, angry, pissed off.
The rant specialist.
Yeah. So that's what I do. So I guess now you'd call me a satirical comedian, writer, actor, director. So that's what I do. So I'm about to go on tour again post lockdown. So I'm back in the game,
back in the saddle.
Yeah, just about.
Okay.
But as we were saying just before we went on air, I'm learning my lines at the moment, and it's not only important to learn your lines and know your lines and all of that, but you sort of have to build up stamina for going on stage for an hour and a half. And at the minute, my stamina is at about 20 minutes before my mind just starts wandering, and you start going, "Oh, I must paint that wall." Yeah. So I'm finding it really hard after 2 years of literally pretty much doing nothing for your to get those muscles going again.
I mean, how do you get back into that? Is it, obviously, do you do some warm-up gigs? Do you do that kind of thing?
Well, I do. I work slightly differently to your normal comedians.
Yeah.
I'm not funny. That's how I like to. I mean, most comedians would say, I guess they write a show over a year or two, but what they do is they try out little sections of new material on a club circuit, right? And I'm not a club comedian, so I write the whole script from start to finish, lock that script, and then start learning it and rehearsing it, and then by virtue of that, things start to change. So it is essentially like learning an 11,000 word monologue. Do you know what I mean? It's quite a task.
It's a weighty tome that you've got to deliver.
And also because I work differently to most stand-up comedians, those little routines and off-the-cuff bits that comedians work really hard on, but I write those. Do you know what I mean? With the script, so you're even rehearsing those little tricks that make it look like you're a stand-up comedian, but I'm not. Basically, it's a dramatic monologue that I'm doing, but it purports to be stand-up comedy rather than a dramatic monologue, because no one is going to pay 30 quid to go and watch. Well, actually, they do, don't they?
They
go
do.
to the RSC and stuff.
if you could disguise it as Shakespeare.
Yeah. There's a joke in the show that I go, theatres have been shut for 2 years, and the great bard has been silent for 2 years. For the first time in 2 years, Shakespeare hasn't been performed anywhere in the world, and there have been other upsides to coronavirus as well. Anyway. That's not one of the greatest jokes in it, by the way.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's just a little taster.
A little teaser. Yeah. Okay, so that's now. That's but obviously the podcast is about going back through before you were well known as Jonathan Pye, and so take us back to early Tom Walker.
So I've trained as an actor, and that's all I wanted to be, and I wanted to be I had sort of quite high fluting ideas about, I wanted to be a serious dramatic actor or a serious character actor. I think it's probably more my scene. I was never going to be a romantic lead. You and I are about the same height. Do you know what I mean? We're not.
Might get an Ewok job.
Yeah, you'd get an Ewok job.
I did get an Ewok job.
You did get an Ewok. And then I left drama school, and actually I worked pretty solidly for a couple of years. And for a couple of years, that was almost the worst thing that could have happened, because then suddenly the work dried up. But for 2 years I was going, this is easy. I don't know what everyone's moaning about. Do you know what I mean? This, you know.
I mean,
and then
because was it straight out of drama school you got a really good...
Pretty much. I had a job straight out of drama school, then, you know, a few months here and there, but then a tiny bit of telly, and then an advert, and then I moved to the West, to London, to do a West End show. And I just thought, well, I've made it. I've made the West End. The career's going to be easy from now on, you know. And of course, that's not the way it works. And so I did spend the best part of 20 years, really, without any serious acting work. You know, the occasional summer season doing Shakespeare outdoors, or, you know, and, you know, the odd couple of jobs that I was, you know, really proud of. But very early on in my career, I realised, which many of my peers didn't go down this path, I soon realised that for your own mental health and for your own life, you can't sit and wait for your agent to call.
Yeah.
You have to go out and you have to earn your rent. You have to pay your wages. And I soon realised that you may as well try and find a job that you don't dread getting up for every day, because it's your life. And actually, I'm really glad, because for 20 years from an acting point of view, from a career point of view, was a real struggle. But along the way, I did have some really nice, you know, a really nice office job is great, because you work with some fun people who no one really in an office job really wants to be there, in my experience. So there's a lot of banter, there's a lot of fun, there's a lot of friendships to be made in office banter, if for want of a better word, is great, you know. So I know that it's going to be more funny talking about the shitty jobs that I've had, but I may as well get out of the way that the one job that really sticks in my mind, that really saw me up to the beginning of Pi. I was still working there when Pi happened. I worked at Foyles, the bookshop, and I worked there for about 5 or 6 years, off and on. And it was just a great place to work. And I was running events there, so there was lots of sort of author events and stuff like that. And I loved getting up every day and going to work there. And I think, had it not been for Foyles, I'd have jacked in acting a lot sooner than I did. And in the end, what happened with Pi was I decided to give up acting. I had no money. I hadn't had any money for 20 years. And when you're in your 20s and early 30s, struggling to pay the rent and struggling to eat is what it's all about. But when 40s come in,
I'm supposed to do that, you know.
Yeah, it's the point. And you're supposed to fall over, and you're supposed to fail, and you're supposed to make mistakes, and you're supposed to be a bit of a dick. Do you know what I mean? And you learn from those mistakes.
Yeah.
But then as 40 was coming over the hill, it's like, you know, I don't have a family or a mortgage or a car, or, you know, so I decided to give up acting. But weirdly, by virtue of making that decision, the jeopardy was gone. And suddenly these ideas that I had in my head, that people are going, well, you should write that down, or you should make a little YouTube clip of it, or you should just do something. Suddenly there was no jeopardy, because I didn't care if people watched it or not. So suddenly I'd had this thing in my head about this news reporter. What do they really think? What do they really say? I'd had it in my head for years, and I just thought, well, just do it. And within a month, my life changed. But I think Foyles really facilitated me having enough time to work out what it is I wanted to do. But that's the good job. That's the good job. Yeah. But now we probably get to the juicy stuff, I imagine.
Yeah. When I met you, you were working at a casting agency. Now
that was another good job,
and that seemed quite fun.
It was.
And you did meet a lot of interesting people.
Well, you met extras, and I've obviously been in. It was an extras agency, you know, supporting artist. Sorry,
that's the technical. That's the technical term. Yeah,
and you know, I've encountered a lot of actors by virtue of being one, and you know, acting with them, and they're all, you know, the stereotypes are there for a reason, and a lot of them are that stereotype, but extras somehow take it to just a slightly different level, because they have a massive sense of self-importance, as do all actors. But they were like, well, I was in the new Nolan Batman. Were you? Yeah, I mean, if you pause it on frame 406, there I was. And it's like, I'm not dissing it, because people make a lot of money out of it, and also it's it must be fascinating if you don't really want to become an actor to hang out on a Christopher Nolan set for a week.
Yeah.
What an amazing opportunity. What a great, interesting thing to do, you know? Have you ever done any extra stuff?
I did, because obviously at the time my girlfriend was Jane, who worked at 20.
Yeah. I mean, we were colleagues, obviously, and
yes,
good mates. Yeah,
yes, of course. And we're still good friends. And then there was a few times when she was in a bit of dire straits because somebody couldn't make it, or I remember one day they needed somebody that specifically had a scooter.
Yeah.
And I had a scooter. So she was like, can you go down? And it was a scene in David Cronenberg's East is East.
It's great. You're in a Cronenberg
I'm in a Cronenberg film. You can see, Naomi Watts is walking out of the hospital and I'm sort of getting off my scooter next to her and walking past.
Aren't you in Shaun of the Dead as well?
I am in Shaun of the Dead, and that was slightly different because that came through a friend of mine, Andy Diggle, who's a comics writer, who was a kind of consultant on Spaced.
Yeah.
And
wow, okay.
Because it was partly set in a comics shop and they wanted to get the references correct. So they used to ask him.
Okay.
Because obviously, if you get a comic reference wrong, all the fanboys are going to be like,
"Oh yeah, you're fucked."
Oh yeah. So they wanted to sort of run this by Andy, and then he phoned because he knew the team and said, "Oh, they're doing a zombie film and they want zombies." So it was just like, well, that sounds fun. Yeah. So it wasn't like extra work because it was sillier. Like, extra work is just a lot of standing about. And there was a lot of this involved too, but actually, rather than just like, okay, when we run action, I want you to walk from that lamppost to that door and don't look at the camera. This was like, when we call action, I just want you to like run, lurch towards the camera making stupid noises. So it was a little more fun.
But also it means you are in, a movie that will stand the test of time. Shaun of the Dead will go down as...
Yeah, it's a good one.
I could imagine watching it in 20 years' time, and if we get over the sort of how quickly jokes become problematic in inverted commas. I'm sure if you watch Shaun of the Dead, there are a couple of bits in it where you go, well, in this day and age, you wouldn't. But apart from it may date slightly in those aspects, I can imagine you could sit down with teenagers in 20 years and go, this is a comedy classic.
I think it's got legs.
It would still be funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt.
It was really fun to do. It was fun to do. And the cast were great. And Edgar Wright was really nice. I remember him quite well. And so that was a good experience. If I even... Just last week, I went to see the Sparks documentary, and I sent Edgar White a little message on Twitter. Said great, and he replied, said, "Oh, thanks."
Isn't Twitter? Twitter is in so many respects the cesspool of
there's
the
good
planet,
things too.
But so I had the mask I've been wearing over lockdown is the 2001, not 2001, The Shining carpet print.
Oh, yeah. I've got that as my mouse mat.
Yeah. So, right. Okay. So I happened to wear it in a pie, and I got a message from Katharina Kubrick, who is Stanley Kubrick's stepdaughter, I believe.
Yeah.
And she was the production designer on The Shining, so she chose that print. And it was just from her going, "Oh, love your choice of," and you just go, "That couldn't have happened 20 years ago."
I know.
I don't know. It was just an amazing moment. You go, "That's as good as Stanley Kubrick messaging me." Do you know what I mean? It was incredible.
I remember my favourite one was when somebody tweeted on one of the radio stations, "What's the saddest song ever to reach number one?" Yeah. And I said, "Shut up in your face." And then I got a tweet from Joe Dolce saying, "Fuck off." And it was brilliant, and I was like so pleased with that.
Is that your dog?
That's Hobson. Yeah, he'll calm down.
Is he in the room?
Hobson, come here.
Oh my god! The podcast will be over if you get him here. I'm just going to talk to the dog.
Let me get him. One sec. Somebody's clearly
Hobson
banged the door.
Yeah, no worries.
Hobson.
Such a great name for a dog as well. Little Hob. I'm so excited about this dog. Well, it looks like I'm hosting Jason Reed's podcast with me, Jason Reed, and me, Tom Walker.
Here we go. I've distracted him with his toy.
Little
Here he is.
Hobson.
Hobson.
Hello, little Hobson.
Hey.
Hello.
There
He's
he
a
goes.
beauty.
He's a lovely boy. Here he is.
Beauty. Hello.
He's a rescue dog.
Oh wow! You've had him a wee while now.
Since October.
Since October.
So quite recent. He's quite old. He's about 10 to 12.
Oh, brilliant.
We don't know his backstory.
Yeah.
But he's a daft bugger, but he's just lovely.
Oh, I always used to be a cat person, and I still am in so many respects. But I don't know. In the last few years, like I go mad walking around the park because there's just a dog and another dog and another dog, and me and my girlfriend have this awful thing that I've always spoken for dogs. I've always, well, hello, I'm a dog. I've always done that, but since at the start of lockdown, if you went out, the only people that were out were joggers and people with their
Dog
dogs,
walkers,
right?
yeah.
And so me and my girlfriend have this phrase. We just every time we'd see a dog, you'd just go, "I'm allowed out. I'm allowed out," because the dogs were allowed out. Right?
Yeah.
And then that just turned into "I'm a dog." So now I just walk down the street and every dog, and they all got the same voice, this sort of slightly posh, silly voice. Every dog I see, so I'm a dog, and I'm a really good dog, actually. So yeah, I mean, it's walking around the park that's all I do. Just talk as if I'm a dog. So there we go.
It's what you do. Anyway, we digress.
Hobson.
But Hobson's a lovely boy. So
Bless him.
anyone listening to
Good
the
dog.
podcast, I say if you've got a chance to get a rescue dog, do it. There's lots of them out there, and they're very good doggies. You know, lots need homes. Anyway, so we were, where were we? We were talking.
We got to the extras agency.
The extras. We were talking.
So that was good fun. That was good banter.
And then Twitter, yeah, of course.
And
How
all
you
of
can
that.
have random connections on Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, it's really weird. I got some pretty. I mean, like I got retweeted by John Cusack once.
Oh, me too.
I mean, I love John Cusack. He is a little bit mental.
A little
on
bit
Twitter.
nuts. Yeah.
He is a bit nuts on Twitter, but it's John
After he
Cusack.
tweeted him, I sort of looked him up and thought,
Yeah, it's a little bit.
John Cusack. That's kind of cool. Then,
But I think my favourite was I got retweeted by Henry Winkler. The
Fonz.
I mean, now that, or I should go, that was something else. That was magic.
The Fonz. That's life goals.
It really is, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, bless. So you did. How many years did you do the extras?
So I was at the extra agency probably maybe 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I was at Foyles 5 or 6 years, but then, so I mean, and I worked in a video shop for a few years. That was an okay job. I wasn't very good at it, and if I'm honest, I don't know if they're going to listen to this podcast, but I mean, I wasn't necessarily. I mean, it was my responsibility to open the shop and close the shop, and I wasn't always best at timekeeping, and I may have had a few long lunch breaks.
Yeah,
and do you know what I mean?
Was it a kind of local indepent video?
It was a
shop?
local independent.
Old school.
Old school, and I ran it into the ground. So, but that was that was an okay job because also I'm not one of these people that, some people want to go to a job and they want to be kept busy.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly happy spending 8 hours behind the counter in a video shop with not one customer, reading the paper and watching a movie. I don't want to be doing anything unless I particularly.
I mean, I guess that's one of the benefits of a video shop. You've got a whole wall of things to pass the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just stick something on, Yeah,
it's great, and it was sort of because it was foreign and independent. I sort of went through a stage of watching foreign movies and independent movies, and sort of got fairly cinema savvy. So that was kind of cool. That was a good one, and then. I mean, the darker years were. So I worked for an estate agent.
Oh, right.
For a couple of years. And that really, what was interesting about that was I was temping there for a week or two. And then, I mean, the thing with me also was I always needed the job more than they needed me to be there. So I say I was a lazy bugger, but with certain jobs, you kind of had to really quickly go make yourself indispensable. So if you suddenly got 2 weeks in an office somewhere, you just go, just be amazing, just clean out the stationery cupboard, even though they haven't asked you to, kind of. And then that's how I sort of got in with Foyles, really. It's just like get them to a point where they can't do without you. And at the estate agent, I ended up being there for 2 years. What was interesting about that was it did oddly feel like playing a role, because I'd have to get into a suit and get on a train at 7:30 in the morning and do that commute and do what everyone else does, essentially. And I'm glad I did it, because everyone needs to, have these sort of life experiences and experience life the way many other people do. But also, it was the first time I'd ever had a regular wage. And suddenly, for the first time in my life, I could pay my rent and have a little bit left over. I could afford to buy my mates a round of drinks and stuff like that. So actually, for about 6 months or so, I was like, actually, this is the way forward.
Yeah.
And then after about a year of it, suddenly the rot started to set in, and you go, I could see myself being here for another 6 years, and then it's too late. Yeah. So what I actually did, I'd written a play called Rona's Pantry.
I remember seeing an episode of that.
Yeah, which I later turned into little web
series, wasn't it?
Yeah. But it was originally a little one-act play that I wrote, and I rewrote it and put it on at the Canal Cafe Theatre, and I made myself do it and resign from the estate agent to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that put me back in the shit again. But I had to just get back into the fray, and then that was another 5 years of crap jobs. I mean, one job that you reminded me of when you said, "Oh, what jobs have you done?" Is at uni. Obviously, at uni you do sort of crap jobs to do what you do, and there was a lot of work for dressing up in big suits.
So is this the one where you remind you of Snap, Crackle and Pop?
Remind me about Snap, Crackle and Pop.
Right, I was intrigued about this.
So
I was thinking Honey Monster.
No,
right.
No, I wasn't the Honey Monster.
Right. No, that's Sugar Puffs. I'm getting my cereals confused.
Get your cereals right, mate.
Jesus.
And we often did, because I was at drama school, we were sort of the go-to places if a particular agency wanted, we need 3 people to dress up as Postman Pat or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And I remember we opened a toy store. There was about 6 of us from drama school. And I got, which I thought was a good thing, was the Fat Controller from Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yeah.
The problem with that was it was the only one without a big head on. So you had a big fat suit, this, and a top hat. And, I looked about 12 when I was about 19. So it was this little skinny runt in a fat suit with a thing. And just all the kids were like, that's not the Fat Controller. So I wish I'd have gone with a big thing. Anyway, we were asked to do, it's just one of the most surreal moments of my entire life. 3 of us were called to help Mick Hucknall turn on the Christmas lights in Manchester.
Wow.
Dressed up as Snap, Crackle and Pop. And before we did that, we had to go round and hand out free little packets of various Kellogg's cereals.
Oh, right.
And the great and the good from Moss Side had come down, and we basically got basically mobbed, not because we were Snap, Crackle and Pop, it's because people wanted the free cereal. Then we had to go and help Mick Hucknall turn on the Christmas lights, as you do, normal, totally normal. And then we were all backstage. Mick Hucknall's there. Snap, Crackle and Pop. I think I was Crackle. Might have been Pop. Can't remember. Possibly Snap. And we're walking on. And as we get, Mick Hucknall runs rounds of applause. And then as we're walking on, the stage manager goes, "Don't forget to duck before you walk on stage, because there's that bit of scaffolding there." He's doing a little health and safety thing as we run on. Duck as you go on, because blah, blah, blah. And I just thought, well, I'm a short arse. I've never had to duck for anything.
No, I don't.
Do you know what I mean?
Problem.
So I just didn't really think about it. Ran on. What I forgot was I had a big Snap, Crackle, Pop head on.
You've probably got an extra foot at least.
You've got at least.
At least.
And I ran onto stage, hit this bar, my head fell off. And it's one of the most surreal moments of my life is Mick Hucknall's there going, "Something's got me started," whatever. and I'm running across the stage, chasing my head behind Mick Hucknall. And I look up and I see on the big screen me chasing after my head with Mick Hucknall trying to. I mean, basically, I sabotaged Mick Hucknall's set.
Did Mick have a reaction to this, or did he? Was he too in the moment?
He was too in the moment. He was in a crooning moment there, I think. But that was a pretty bad one. I mean, I've other jobs that spring to mind. Yeah. Okay, so the worst job, I think the worst job I've ever had was a call center. So I've ticked all the boxes here.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
I've done that. Yeah,
you know, the one I've only done a few call centers. The problem with me is, for a start, I've got a real problem with the phone. I mean, I hate the phone.
Yeah.
The phone rings. I mean, if the phone rings and it's not a number I recognise, there is just no way.
No chance. I do the same.
None
no
whatsoever.
I'll be Googling it.
But people I know who I haven't spoken to for... Actually, it's worse if you haven't spoken to for a while, because you go, well, I've got to catch up with them, so I'll leave it till I'm in the mood. So then it goes another 6 months. I just hate the phone. I'm not very good at it. I find Zoom much more doable, or a video call much more doable, because you can get up and go, I'm just going to nip for a piss, I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? And you can
say, oh, it's a dog, you know.
Yeah,
there's a bit more life to
it. But also you can have silences.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You can sit for silence and ponder and then chat a bit more. You can't do that on the phone. And
you think they've just gone.
Yeah, and I'm not particularly good at small talk in person, really, and I find the phone very uncomfortable. So by virtue of that, a few call centre ones I've had, it's all right if you're in a call centre and people are calling you, even if it's to complain that their boiler's gone, or to shout at you about customer service, because they've called you. It's the calling out that just made me horrible. Every time you press call, it was just like, oh God, please don't answer. You know, it would go to answer machine, and you'd go, yes.
Yeah.
You know.
Were you tried to sell something?
Well, the first one I ever did, it was trying to, which I found ghastly, and it really made me think about the charity sector. It was ringing people up, asking them to donate £5 a month to whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that was horrible, because you've got to be a salesman to do it. And it's actually really quite, you know, you think of the charity sector as being all sort of lovely and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, you'd call someone, you go, hello, I'm calling from, I don't know, whatever it is, the RSPB. It never was the RSPB, and I've got nothing against the RSPB. Hello, blah, blah, blah. Would you like to hear a little bit about birds? Would you donate £5 a month? And you'd have some dear old granny going, oh, well, I'm not really sure about that because of my pension, but let me look in my purse. And you go, no, it has to be a direct debit. And after a minute or so, you go, I'm sorry, love, I'm so sorry to have disturbed you. Have a lovely day. And you put the phone down. And then your manager would come up to you and go, see, now what you did there is you didn't go for the second ask. You need a first ask. You need to see how they are and then go for the second ask. And then if they don't go for that, you have to go for a third ask. Would you consider? And it's like, I'm not going to do that, because she's a dear old granny and she can't afford it. Do you know what I mean? So I really hated that. So that didn't last long there. But the worst one actually was one where people called in, and it was for an HR company, right? So like for big corporations like Coca-Cola or the NHS, you know, people that have tens of thousands of staff.
Yeah.
What you do is you outsource your HR. But what they mean by that is you don't call in sick to your boss. You call in sick to a call center, and they will inform the company. Now, the idea behind that is people, if they're not going to come in tomorrow, you fret about it, don't you? You fret and you go, oh God, I'll call them at 8 in the morning. If you know that you don't have to talk directly to your boss, you're much more likely to phone in earlier, which means you can find a replacement earlier. And also it logs the amount of times you call in sick, blah, blah, blah. You have to log all these details, and it means statistically they can see who's off more and blah, blah, blah. And over a large corporation, it saves them money and time and actually ends up with less sick days or some sort of bullshit like that. However, my job was for people to call in, and tell me they were sick, right? Now, if you're sick, what is the thing if you're lying about being sick, certainly, I've got the shits. That is always the go-to, because no one's going to say, could you describe your symptoms, right? Well, it was our job to go, if it was a cold or a flu or any sort of illness, even if it was, mental illness, I'm feeling depressed today. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Can you describe your symptoms? You had to mark it all down. So, of course, and by virtue of that, because it's the morning, people call in early. So it was my job to be there at 5 a.m. every morning to man the phones so that people could describe their diarrhea to me.
Oh,
that was essentially what my job was.
Start to the day.
It was horrible. It was depressing. It was, and also it was really corporate. So I remember that the guy that ran it, or the boss, or the team leader, whatever you want to call it. You're not you're a boss. He'd come round this huge call centre, and he'd go around and he'd make a point of high-fiving everyone. High-fiving, hey, we're going to... And I was such a dick. I made a point every time he'd do that, and I'd leave him hanging, and I'd just shake his hand, because you just go, I'm not, you're not my... Oh, it was just so... Oh, it was gross. It was just so gross. That was really near the end for me. That was one of the jobs that made me think, I can't be doing these shit jobs anymore. I need to go and... Literally. I'm going to have to go and train to be a teacher. Yeah. And,
one thing about that is I've noticed that when I would call in sick, no matter what my ailment was, I'd kind of do it in a voice as if I'd got a sore throat.
Yeah, even if it's...
If it's diarrhea. I've got... It's not connected in the slightest. Got a headache.
Yeah, got an ingrowing toenail. Absolutely, yeah.
It's my sick day voice.
Absolutely.
Special voice for that occasion.
And that awful thing of sort of... it's just... I mean, those are the worst phone calls, aren't they? Those are the phone calls that is you why dread. I hate phone calls. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Those sort of awkward, awful. Trying to think of other shit jobs now, really. I think it's... let's talk about you. What is your job? Because I often wonder that, because I see your... I've been really impressed with I don't play the guitar, and I never will, and I won't try, but I've oddly occasionally watched one or two of your tutorials, right? But I've certainly recommended your tutorials to people, and then they've sort of gone, and then you go, no, watch it, seriously. And then they always come back and go, there's some really interesting stuff there. And my flatmate commented that on your taste in the songs that you pick.
I try and keep it eclectic.
Kind of out there a bit.
Yes,
do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
But do you pick them knowing that it will be useful as a exercise for a guitarist, or you go, no, that's just a cool song that I think people should want to learn to play?
It's a combination of both.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's a really great one to learn on guitar. There's really interesting things in there. And then sometimes I'll just hear a song on the radio and I'll think, that's fun. That's a great tune. Do that. And then a lot of the time, I get loads of requests, so people just messaging me. So somebody messaged me last night with this request for this like Northern Soul song that I'd never heard of before, by a guy called Johnny Thunder. And I put it on, and I was like, wow, that's so cool. You kind of discover things.
So with regards to, like, if you listen to a song that you really like, you go, right, do you look up how to play it?
No.
Or do you just listen to it and work it out?
Yeah, because that's why I've got such an eclectic mix, because a lot of the songs out there that you can't find sheet music, or at least decent sheet music. A lot of sheet music's kind of wrong. So there's something I've always been able to do is work out songs by ear.
Wow.
And
have you got perfect pitch, or do you have to find... No, so you have to find where to start, kind of thing.
Yeah. Songs can start. So very few people have got like perfect pitch. It's kind of something you often learn at a very young age, or just born with. But that doesn't really make a difference, because once you know what key you're in, you can work out the rest of it by just listening. So
we were on a train the other day. I was coming back from Somerset visiting my dad, and I know it was on the way down actually. We got on, and this guy sat down with his top off. Yeah, his top was off, and he had a nipple piercing with a little dangly cross there, and he had 2 guitars with him and an amp, and he was cool as fuck, right? And then he was a bit weird. Gotta be honest. And then he started sort of making noises, and he was a bit odd, and it was odd enough for me and my girlfriend to go, should we just move down the carriage? So that's what we did. We moved down the carriage. Yeah. Anyway, then out of nowhere, I could hear these sort of ting, ting, ding, 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 and realised he'd got his electric guitar out, plugged in his earphones, and had started playing. And it was just so annoying because you can hear it, right? The whole carriage could hear it. So we thought, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But, this guy had 2 pretty decent guitars and an amp, and he's playing guitar. Maybe he's, don't know. You assume that, and he looked like a rock star, right? And then I started listening. You could make out what he was playing. For an hour, he played 2 riffs. One was Layla.
Oh, God.
Right. And the other one, the riff from Layla, but badly.
Yeah.
And the other one was the theme tune to The Godfather. And I just thought, he's on grade 1 here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So he's got all the paraphernalia. He's got looks like he's got the guitars and everything, but he's still on The Godfather, which presumably is like one of those. This is one of the first ones you're going to work out.
It's a simple tune. It's a simple melody. And let's be honest, if you're a proper rock star, you don't need to go on a train, get your amp out to find your audience.
This is what was so interesting about it. It was like if he had been the most incredible guitarist, you'd probably have gone, that annoying twat. But the fact that he wasn't, it's just like, you really annoying twat. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, it was just
go back to your bedroom and do what we all did and
practice. Practice on your own.
Until you get good at it.
With an audience. Absolutely. But anyway, my point being, congratulations on that, because it's gone from strength to. I mean, it's really
it's my job now, basically. Yeah. My YouTube channel, and it started by accident. It started doing lessons for friends who would sort of say, how do you play this song? And rather than traipse across London with a guitar to go to the house and sit down and say, do this, I said, I'll stick it on YouTube for you. Never really thinking that it would get anything beyond that.
But what I like as well is because I sent my flatmate a couple of sort of examples, and like one of them is about 5 minutes long, and I forget which song it is, but you take us through, and it's basically that. It's these 3 chords, but in a weird combo. And then there's another one that's about an hour long, where you take us through the bass, you take us through this, And what's weird is I have never played a guitar in my life, and I've never, I've never been a musician. I used to sing a bit, but I've never been a musician. And yet there is something oddly mesmerizing about those videos.
It's strange, but I've got a few friends who say to me they don't play guitar at all, but they quite often just watch them. They kind of find them quite.
And also, I just think engaging. The way you talk it through, I love the fact that I forget which one it was, but you're going, and you can fiddle about, do something like that, or just do a little something like that, and so you're not like it's not prescribed what you're.
No, I often say that to do, you don't have to do it like I'm doing it. It's more fun to learn and then do your own thing with it. That's the whole point of learning guitar and stuff. You take things from other people and what they've done, but you don't just want to be a carbon copy. You just want to learn the style of their technique, and then so learn what they're doing, but then don't just play Layla for an hour.
Yeah,
learn those notes, and then and then put them in a different order and do your own thing with it. Stuff like that. Learn as a tool, not to just copy people, but
also presumably with every song you learn, that's another little skill in your guitar box, because you go, that little combination. I mean, I don't know how it works, but that combination there, you go, well, you can use that.
It's another idea in your repertoire. It's like, I could do that, and maybe I'll change that note, and then I could do this, and so everything you learn.
Or I could just play the theme
Layla
to The Godfather really badly.
Yeah, which is fine if that's your thing. Anyway, that's me. Basically, what I do now, which again is one of those things that a little bit like yourself, just almost came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
because obviously Jonathan Pie for you was a video that went viral.
Yeah,
and then that was a real,
and I think
defining moment.
It was a defining moment, but. Us talking about these shit jobs and these sort of normal jobs that we've had, I am, if I hadn't done that and been through that experience for that amount of time and with my, and it sounds vulgar, but it does come down to money. Money can't buy you happiness, but it fucking helps make your life easier, right? Yeah. And when you really, really are struggling for a decade or more, when this video went viral, I recognized it for the opportunity it was. And I don't think I'd have maybe recognized it a decade before, because I'd have probably been belligerent and going, well, I'm not a comedian. I don't want to be a writer. I don't want to be a YouTube star. I don't want to be a stand-up comic. I want to be an actor. Yeah. Whereas now you just go, and I'm so glad I did. I've played the Hammersmith Apollo.
I was there. I came to see it.
That's bonkers. That is bonkers.
It was huge. It's a huge thing. It was full, and I was stood there watching, thinking, this is amazing.
I know, compared to what I could have been doing had my acting career been okay, I might have played a theatre that big, but I'd have had a couple of lines in it, the spear carrier at the back, the proverbial spear carrier. So it's been all these crappy jobs, or some good jobs, and those people that from the wanker who did the high fives to the people at Foyles that let me go and do a little play for a month, but there's a job for you when you come back. They all helped get me to that point where Pie was possible, I suppose. And I think, and maybe you're in the same boat in the sense that, you sort of drift. If you're in the arts, you do drift from job to job and opportunity to opportunity. And sometimes it feels a bit barren and a little bit aimless. And sometimes you have a really great time by virtue of that, because you have experiences that you couldn't have possibly imagined. But then with something like this guitar thing, you go, I've got a purpose. I've got something solid. I've got something I can do, especially something like over lockdown. You managed to keep your job going.
I think it's it's true for so many people who kind of find a path, like you did with Pie and guitar and stuff, is that you do. A lot of people don't have a master plan. Yeah, you think that they've got there because they've meticulously followed a career path and to drama school and it's not often the way it works out. A lot of people do go from this to this and then suddenly something happens, and then that's what they are now.
What they do.
You kind of stick at it in some way. So, all my jobs have been vaguely connected to like music or video production, things like that. And but they've been all kind of, different companies doing different types of things, doing silly stuff with the Ministry of Fun and all this kind of stuff. But eventually it kind of led to a point which wasn't a predefined point. It just kind of it ended up falling into that, which
to get to that point, you needed to have times when you are inspired and having fun, but also those times when you're stuck in a rut. And you have to, when you're stuck in a rut, and I think it's a human condition, you kind of go, there's a great line in The Office where Tim kind of goes, at the moment my life's on a 3. And I could roll the dice and I could easily end up with a 6, but I could end up with a 2. So why don't I just stick with the 3? And it takes balls to roll the dice sometimes. And I think Pie was definitely the last roll of the dice, really. But you need to sometimes be stuck in that rut to be able to get out of it. Do you know what I mean?
You've got to have some sort of impetus.
Yeah.
You can just find yourself pleasantly coasting.
Yeah, or unpleasantly coasting.
Yeah,
you know.
I think it's maybe that tipping point between the pleasantly coasting and the unpleasant. Enough of the unpleasant coasting to tip you into carrying on, pushing forwards.
Doing
something, you know.
Yeah, so. and yeah, I mean, I think and age is a you know, you know, in so many respects, I don't feel like I'm in my early 40s, but in other respects, I do, and it's not actually that bad. I feel like I'm mellowing slightly. I think, you know, I think the first few years of Pi, I did struggle with the success of it, in the sense that I was so nervous of dropping the ball. I was so nervous of wasting the opportunity, of suddenly being in the same position where I had to work at a call center, and you go, I fucked that one chance up.
Yeah.
So I became I was a bit of a dick for a couple of years with Pi. I wouldn't let anyone near it. I wouldn't take criticism or direction very well. In fact, I was a bit of an arsehole to a few people, I think, who sort of said, I wasn't sure about your last piece, or I disagreed with you, but how dare you, you know? And I've really mellowed on that now, which I'm glad about. Do you know what I mean? And I'm much more comfortable in my own skin, and I'm much more comfortable in Pi's skin, if that's weird. You do know what I mean? I
mean, it must be hard for you, because there must be it must be a difficult thing, especially with someone like Pi, where a lot of people genuinely think Pi is a real person.
Yeah.
You know,
well, I think more importantly as well is they know he's a real person, but they can't distinguish between. I mean, all I do with Pi is fictionalize a possible political outlook, which is usually aligned with mine. Let's be honest. I mean, I'm not. You know, he's not. It's not Coogan playing Partridge, who's a Daily Mail reader. Do you know what I mean? They are definitely. You know, we're definitely on the same page. But I think people struggle. And sort of, and again, as the time has gone on, I've been able to understand more and more why they struggle. That everything that I put in Pi's mouth is not necessarily an endorsement or or how I think, or certainly with Pi, the way I would put an argument. Yeah, I mean, he's crass. He is. I mean, the thing with Pi is what I'm trying to do, I suppose, is open up an argument and for people to stop hurling abuse at, Leave voters are thick and Remainers are all, you know, thick or whatever. You know, I'm trying to, I suppose, get people to possibly open their minds to different points of view. And yet Pi is exactly what I'm railing against. Someone that just shouts and arrogantly thinks that he's right all the time. But I think he's mellowed in the last couple of years. Do you know what I mean? And maybe he's lost a little bit of his edge. Mm-hmm. But I didn't. I think that's the thing that I felt most uncomfortable with. I was actually, if I think about it, quite happy being a writer, quite happy being a comedian or a satirist. But I struggled with this idea that I think people thought I was a bit of what they call an edgelord, that I was out there to try and ruffle some feathers, and more and more you're sort of seeing that sort of. I mean, if you look at GB News, that's the sort of people I'm talking about. That sort of these commentators that are probably believe what they're saying, but they do it with a slightly snide kind of. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. They're just out for reaction. I think so. It's not even real news. It's just people.
Yeah,
spewing opinions.
Yeah,
it's my opinion.
Which I guess in a way has its place. I mean, the thing is, I haven't watched very much GB News at all, but the bits I've caught is it's not a news channel; it's an opinion channel. And you go, that's all right. I don't have. I seriously don't have a serious objection. You know, this stop advertising on GB News. I don't give a fuck. But it is an opinion channel, not a news channel. I'm rambling. What was I talking about? Yeah, I think that's what made me feel the most uncomfortable. This idea that I was out there to, and I got into a few spats with people, and I've taken massive steps away from Twitter in the last couple of years, and I am so much better for it. And spats with comedians, because I've thrown a few grenades at the comedy world, because I find them a little bit censorious, a little bit sensitive. It's comedy, and I feel much more comfortable now that I don't feel that I need to be controversial. I'm sure a lot of my fan base wish that I would be a little bit more edgy. I just want to be funny. And I do want, and not out and out funny. I do want Pie to be thoughtful and occasionally provocative, but for the right reasons. And I want it to occasionally make people think. You go, Jesus, I've never thought of it that way. But really, all Pie is. But in the main, the people that watch Pie are the people that agree with him, and there's something cathartic in watching someone saying what you think, but in more colourful terms. I mean, that's the beauty of Pie, is no one talks like Pie. No one has these string machine gun fire epithets at the ready. No one has that. But that's the joy of performing him. You write them, you hone them, these wonderful quick fire bits of anger, and then you have to perform them as if he's thinking it up on the spot. And I think that's who he is. So
and that's kind of the whole kind of shtick of Pie, in a sense. It always starts and ends with a kind of restrained Pie.
Yeah,
and then it's an outburst, and then it's back,
and then it's back to the restraint, which is what we all do. I mean, if it's like when you I don't know, perhaps you chatting to someone in the pub and you're having a conversation with someone at the bar who you don't know, and they sort of say something that is totally against your politics. I voted Brexit, blah, 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 bloody immigrants. And you sort of just go, just
go to the loo.
The minute you walk away, you go, racist. So we all do it. We all slip from one to the other. And I think that we do that especially at work, actually, which brings us sort of full circle. Is at work, you are playing a role, it's still you, but you can step outside and take a call from your best mate and go, we had a great night last night, didn't we? And could you just get those files for me, please? And you can swap between the two. That's all Pie is doing, really.
We all present different faces to the world.
Depending
on our situation.
I think maybe I'm thinking too deeply about him, but I do think that that is what the hook of Pie really is, not the politics, is that we all connect, we all can relate to him, even if you're a Tory voter or I wanted to say a Leave voter as if a Leave voter is somehow completely alien to me politically.
But everyone in life has these pressure cooker moments.
Yeah, exactly.
You just wish you could take the little thing off the pressure cooker and let all the steam out. So everyone could relate to that.
Yeah. But like I say, I'm much more comfortable in his skin now. And this is the first tour that I am nervous, and I've got a lot of work to do, and I've got a lot of lines to learn and bits, blah, 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 blah. But because the tour I'm about to go on is essentially, I've toured this tour before. So structurally, it's kind of the same show, but a lot's happened since then. So the last show was all about Brexit and Trump, really.
Yeah.
Trump's gone. So I've made a point in this show of not doing a single Trump joke. I mention him a couple of times, but I'm done with Trump until he returns. So there's no Trump. There's very little on Brexit, because let's be honest, we're all bored stiff of it. Yeah. And a lot's happened since then. So it's essentially a brand new show, but with, if people have seen it before, there's a few bits you go, I remember this little set piece. But it's the first show I can't wait to go get on stage with. Normally I'm really nervous about it, or is it any good, or it's a lot of hard work, and I just can't wait to get on stage and put the suit back on and go for it. I think this tour has been delayed for me so many times. It's been delayed 3 times. I think weirdly, if I can get to the end of this tour, that'll be a real significant moment in my coronavirus. You know, I'm sure there will be restrictions and there will be, you know, the world will not be back to normal for some years to come. But I think the last show of this tour, if we get that far, which at the moment it looks like we'll be okay.
Yeah.
I really do think it will be a moment for me that is like, well, that is at least that part of lockdown and coronavirus finally done. So
yeah, a significant kind of return.
Yeah.
To some sort of normality.
I can't wait. And what I'm looking forward to this time is, like we said earlier, I played the Hammersmith a few times, but what I've always wanted to do is have a little run in a theatre, like a little residency.
Yeah.
So I'm doing 10 or 11 shows at the Bloomsbury. So instead of doing two big shows, I've got 10 or 11 shows in at the Bloomsbury Theatre, which it would just be nice to kind of turn up. Because when you're on tour, you go to a new theatre every night. It's a new auditorium, new stage, new dressing room. You've really got to find your bearings very, very quickly. There's something quite nice about signing in at the same stage door every day for a week or two, and you just know it. You just know exactly what to expect. So I'm looking forward to that.
No, that sounds great. And I always like to ask, kind of at the end of these, a little bit of advice, like, you know, for people who, you know, do want to do whatever they want to do, about, you know, sticking with it, getting through it. What, you know, bit of experience that you've had. I mean, we've talked about this already, but, you know, if you
well, the first thing is, from my experience, as we've discussed here, is if you are struggling in the arts, as everybody is, try and find a normal job, a day job, that always be honest with your employer. I'm an actor, so I might need to go for an audition at any moment, and there can be no question about it. I was always really clear with all my employers. But so don't give up what you want to do, but finding a day job that you like, that helps you pay your bills, with a nice group of people, that you get to the end of the day and you go, I had a good day's work then. Yes, it wasn't acting. Yes, it wasn't artistic. Yes, it wasn't doing what you were doing. But your mental health will survive what might be 10, 15 years of jobbing, struggling, a month here, 6 months here where you're not working. If you can if you're lucky enough to find a job that offers you some flexibility and is nice to you, and I swear it will set you up for the long term, massively. And it saved my life. Do you know what I mean? And it saved my career. Not having a career, it got me a career in the end by sticking it out, by having a normal job. And I suppose the other bit of advice, which I didn't take for 20 years, everyone always said, why don't you write your own material? Why don't you put your stuff up on YouTube? And no, because I want to be a legitimate actor. Don't be such a snob to start with, I think. You know, I always remember reading an interview with Ewan McGregor, who did very, very well direct straight out of drama school. But he said something really snobby in this interview. And he said, you know, I didn't want to come out of... His first job was straight out of drama school to do a TV play with... Pennies from Heaven guy.
Bob Hoskins?
No, Bob Hoskins.
The writer.
Christ.
Dennis Potter. Dennis Potter.
So his first job straight out of drama school was in a Dennis Potter TV thing. You go, fine. But he said, you know, I didn't want to come out of drama school and just, you know, get the odd episode of Boone, which is essentially, you know, the odd episode of Casualty or whatever. Yeah, and I just thought, you arrogant prick. That's what most actors have to do for a bit. Do you know what I mean? They have to do these jobbing bits, and you know, you diversify, I suppose, is the other bit of advice, in the sense that I wanted to be a serious actor, and I knew that I had comedy chops, as they say. So, you know, I was quite happy playing the comedic role in a serious play, or, you know, the fool in a Shakespeare play. That was okay. But my life and my career is so much more interesting now that I've diversified, if you like, and I'm a stand-up comedian, and I'm a occasionally asked to do a podcast, as if people give a shit what my opinion is about anything. But, it's still fun to do, and write your own stuff, do your own stuff. I mean, when I was growing up, all I ever wanted was a camcorder, but they were too expensive. Right?
Yeah.
It was a proper video camera because I just wanted to make my own things. Right now, you've got a mobile phone, and you can get an edit package on your computer, and you can make a movie.
Yeah.
The chances are it will be a terrible movie, but make a movie. Why not?
This is what I always say to people. I do a course at Rain Dance on talk on filmmaking, and I always start the course with, why you keep coming to courses? Just get some equipment, go and make a film, make a terrible film. You'll learn a lot from making a terrible film. You might remake it again better later, but stop thinking you can learn everything by coming to a 3-hour night class. You've got to get out and do it.
I forget whose bit of advice it was, but it was about writing. It reminds me, it was, what would your advice be to writers? And it was, write it down.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh yeah.
It's as simple as that.
It's no good. We've all got a novel in our head. Writers write it down, and it reminds me of Al Pacino being asked, what's the best bit of advice you can give an actor? And he just goes, learn your lines. and it seems so simple, and yet it is true. And with Pi, it's learn your lines, know your lines, know your lines, and then you can go and perform it. And it seems so obvious, but it's like, what he means is learn your lines, but know them backwards. Not only learn your lines, which is basic, but you've got to know them backwards so that it just comes out sort of naturally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because that's like, as an actor, it's such an obvious part of your job, but everyone will, find your character. But you've got to know your lines.
Learn your lines.
You've got to do that.
Know what the character is going to say next, and you've done basically 90% of the work, and why he's saying it.
Yes.
And then you've done 90% of the work. I mean, the thing with Pi is, when I'm doing the live show, like I said earlier, it's like learning an 11,000 word monologue. I can't shy away from a single phrase in that 11,000 word monologue, because that phrase leads on to the next bit, and if I drop that phrase, I'll be lost. So I have to learn it, but I have to learn it so I could do it backwards, because I'm on stage for an hour and 20 minutes, and you will lose concentration at moments. And when you lose concentration, you have to trust that your muscles, literally your mouth, remembers what comes next. So there have been times on stage where you go, I've got no idea what I'm going to say next. And you normally get about 30 seconds, a minute notice where you go, I don't really know where this is going. The words are coming out, but you're like, oh shit, I don't know where I am. And I always just go, in my head, you go, just relax. And then 99 times out of 100, it just comes out. And you go, I don't know how I remembered it. And the reason you remembered it is because you drilled it.
Repetition,
and it's got to be exactly the same playing a guitar.
I was thinking, it's like,
you've got to.
It's like this idea of muscle memory.
You can't. I bet sometimes you're playing a guitar. I bet sometimes you're playing it and you go, I don't even know how my hands are doing this. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
there's certain things I play that I just know so well that I'm not even thinking about them when I'm playing them.
Yeah. It's the only way to be a musician or an actor or a comedian. I suppose that's the thing, is that would be my main advice, particularly if you want to be a stand-up comedian, is rehearse in your room, rehearse. Yeah. I remember a story of a friend of mine who worked in an office with someone who was the funniest guy in the office, funniest guy you'd ever met. And for years, everyone had been going, you should do stand-up, mate. Yeah. You should do stand-up. Anyway, he came into the office one day and he said, I'm doing an open spot tomorrow night. I'm doing an open spot. I'm taking your advice. I'm doing an open spot. And so all the office went along to support him. And he was dreadful.
I can imagine.
And afterwards, he came off stage. He was like, oh, God, that was awful. And everyone was like, what happened, mate? What happened? I mean, did you forget your lines? He was like, well, I didn't really rehearse anything because you kept telling me I was funny. So I thought I'd just get up there and just riff. And you're like, no, you've got to know what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? But there we are.
There you go.
So that's my advice.
Know your onions.
Yeah, that was 20 minutes of advice there.
That's good advice. It's good, solid stuff. Well, on that note, I'm just going to say, Tom Walker, thank you ever so much for joining us on the While I Was Resting podcast. Some great insights there, and really enjoyed that.
Thanks, Jason. It's been a real pleasure to catch up, and come and see my show.
Thank you very much.
While I Was Resting.